Hello, everybody. Welcome to the X Podcast. It's so great to have you with us today. I have my friends Russ and Tim here. Iceland Russ and Tan Tim.
Canal Winchester Tan Tim. I like that.
Yeah, very nice to see
Yeah,
you.
you just got back from Iceland.
I did. Kevin said he can tell.
Yeah, you.
Because you lost
Did
your
take
tan?
Did you
Or
take an overnight flight?
Oh, that's
Listen,
rough.
Listen,
How rough?
there's nothing I can do about how I look. Well, I guess there are. Yeah, I got in.
There's nothing I can do about brushing my teeth. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh.
Right.
I'm kidding.
Right.
You smell fine, though.
Thank you.
How was it?
I've had COVID, so I can't tell how you smell. Sorry,
Okay.
How
never
was it?
mind.
I smell beautiful, like
Okay.
roses. It was incredible. It was a dream. I posted a little bit about it.
Wow.
But it honestly, it's on a lot of people's bucket list. Was never on mine. My dad kind of masterminded the whole trip, but it was unbelievable. The scenery, the nature, the architecture of Iceland, all of it just creates a place that I've never even imagined. It was amazing.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. Every time I think about Iceland, I think of that movie Eurovision, which I told you that.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
I know which one you're
With
talking
Will
about.
Ferrell?
I need to see it.
Yeah.
It's like the Europe American Idol or something.
Yeah.
No, it's so bad. Oh my gosh, it's one of those movies that you just cringe the whole time. But
But you can't
it
stop
reminds
watching.
me of Iceland. So every time you posted a picture, I would giggle a little bit.
It
Not
looked
because,
beautiful.
not because the picture was bad, just because of that movie. So we're glad to have you back.
It's good to be back.
And you just got back from vacation swimming with the sharks.
Yeah, yeah.
Shark Week by the time when we record
guess
this.
what? My brother got stung by a stingray.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Not a jellyfish, a
He was
stingray.
standing in the shallow water, and it was the last day. I was like, we drove overnight, so I was like sleeping to prepare myself for the drive. And I wake up, oh, your brother's getting a tetanus shot because he
Wait, I
got
didn't know.
stung by a stingray.
When you say sting by a stingray,
He
does
got
that mean they
barbed.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying with the tail. Is that what they consider
It was like in the sand, and he stepped on it,
Really?
like a little baby one, and it went right on his ankle.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah. But he's fine.
Did you pee on it?
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But
Is it just jellyfish, or do you do it also when stingrays
I don't
sting
know.
you? Do you have to pee on it?
just to be safe, I pee on people every time they're bit by anything. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Oh. No
Get
sharks when you were down
weird
there?
looks. No sharks.
Have you
It was
seen
good. We had
that
the
there's been a-
hurricane or the
Oh, yeah,
tropical
tropical storm.
storm. So there was like 90-mile-per-hour winds
Oh, that's fun.
on the island. And we're like, people were texting me, are you okay? You okay? Neither of you texted me, which
Well,
that's
no,
cool.
I
I
just
did.
assumed you were okay.
But it was like, hey, everything's fine. And it was at the time. And then
There's a
like an
tropic-
hour passed.
Yeah.
And the winds were 90 miles an hour. There was pool chairs from all the houses around us
Yes.
just flying everywhere.
I love it.
It was nuts.
That's awesome.
It rained the whole
we,
time?
We drove into a hurricane
Just
once.
that one
when we
night.
went to Florida, and it was awesome. Like the hurricane was hitting in central Florida, and me and my friend, we had like raincoats. We went outside, and we were like just standing out in the middle of the wind. It was
Bring it, Mother Nature.
yeah, come on, that's what we were doing. It was fun,
Yeah.
but we didn't. No one got hurt, so that was good.
Yeah, we had a good time, spent some time with family, and now we're back.
And
so.
the Sharks. It's Shark Week right now as we record this. I'm so excited.
Is it
I
really?
watch it. Yeah, most evenings.
It's this week?
Yeah, right now. Love it.
I love Shark
It won't
Week.
be by the time this podcast episode comes out, but Shark Week's awesome, and there have been a lot of shark bites along the coast. It's up big time.
Something to have to do with COVID, I'm sure.
Definitely. Yep.
I
think
texted
that
you
was
guys
COVID.
last night. I don't know if you guys have any words. There was an ESPN personality that stepped into some hot water.
I got no words.
Do you want to say anything
I got
about it?
nothing. I got nothing. I don't know. Yeah, that was probably not the best thing to say.
Well, I think it's worth bringing it up because we talk a lot about this crap on here.
I like
but-
sports. Let's talk about.
Stephen A.
Yep.
And if you don't know who Stephen A., it's that guy that
Stephen
yells
A.
on the
Smith.
TV all the time.
If you Google him, you will realize that you do know who he
You-
is.
Everybody kind of knows
Mostly
who he
an
is.
NBA reporter. Mostly.
Yeah. When I texted you guys, Russ texted me back, Stephen who?
I didn't see.
Yeah,
Well,
I had no
the
idea.
way your text was, I didn't see the A. I just saw Steven. I thought
You thought
so.
you
I
were
thought
Stephen
I
Furtick.
thought I was going to say
No.
Pastor Stephen Furtick said something about a baseball player. Why would that matter?
Well, what he
And-
said was, the best of my understanding, was that the best player in baseball right now, the All-Star game was this past week, and it's the best week of baseball. So
Dude, that
fun to
was an
watch.
incredible
Did you watch the home run derby?
I watched every bit of it. It was
It's-
amazing.
I don't care if you like
Lonzo-
baseball or not.
Oh, it was
is.
intense.
It's awesome.
It was incredible.
It's awesome.
I don't
So-
even watch the All-Star game. I watched the home run derby.
So
it's
Mancini,
amazing. Yep.
the guy who's in the finals,
Yeah,
guy
he
who
had
beat
cancer a year
so
ago. It
I
was
saw
amazing.
him. He played in he came up in the Orioles organization. That's who he plays for right now.
Yeah.
And he played with Drew Dosch, who's the local guy who I used to hit baseball with all the time.
Yeah.
And he's the head.
It
coach
was
of
a
the high
great
school now.
story. I was like pulling for him,
they
but
played with
Alonso
each
was
other.
just look.
They played with each other in Double-A.
Oh, really?
They came up with each other.
Yeah.
And so now he's winning or coming in second place in the Home Run Derby.
That was a cool story.
But yeah, fun to watch.
Ohtani was
Awesome. But Shohei Ohtani, is this
Amazing.
6'5" Japanese player. Pitcher.
best hitter in the
They
league.
call him a two-way hitter, a two-way player. He pitches and he hits, which is people don't do that. It hasn't really happened.
Well, they do it
since-
in one league.
It hasn't happened since Babe Ruth.
They do it in one
But
league.
I'm saying that no
Yes,
one.
since Babe Ruth.
Yeah, they don't.
My cousin.
What?
Babe Ruth is my cousin.
No,
That's
he's
not
not.
true.
He is.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
You're still thinking
14th.
about Sandlot from a
No,
couple weeks ago.
no. He's my 14th cousin.
Your 14th
My dad's
cousin.
13th cousin.
What
My
23
dad's-
you did you?
No, my dad's mom. Her last name was Ruth before she married before my grandfather became a Moore. So it was Ruth all the way down there from Baltimore.
Wow.
Yep. So my dad's related.
I feel like we should stop the episode and do a part 2.
What? It didn't translate into my genes. I was not the greatest baseball player in the world. I did play, but little league. But yeah, so he's
Are you
my
serious?
Yeah, he's my 14th cousin.
Wow. Why did you not bring that up in your
I
message?
thought about it afterwards. Like I should have probably mentioned it. I just didn't think it was that relevant.
I've known you for a long time, and I've never known that you're Babe Ruth's grandson.
Pretty distant grandson. Pretty distant cousin. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyways.
That's okay.
So anyways, back
Well,
to
back
Babe
to
Ruth.
Stephen A.
And wait a
If
minute.
we can-
Okay, Ohtani.
So
Shohei.
Shohei Ohtani, no one's done what he's done since your uncle,
Yeah.
and he's the best. I mean, everybody.
Okay, but listen, my great grandfather Hank Aaron
Stop.
once. What?
You're making stuff up now.
Maybe.
My brother's
My
Derek
great-
Jeter.
My great grandfather invented airmail. Did you know that?
That's not true.
No, it's true.
I don't.
No. Okay.
I actually
We
write
gotta
about.
stop.
I actually write about it in my book.
Okay.
My grandparents had a trophy in
What
their
if people
house.
fact check it?
From Wilbur and Orville Wright. They can. It's on there. Benjamin B. Lipsner. He was a captain in the Army. He was tasked with inventing airmail. So it was back when Pony Express and all that. So he was the one that actually came up with a lot of the original routes.
You
and the
just air
things.
from greatness.
that was on my mom's side. But it was interesting because there was this trophy that my grandparents always had in their house. And it was like a pilot that had like these long like wings that had goggles, whatever. And it was given to their father, which would be Benjamin, so my great-grandfather, by Orville and Wilbur Wright.
Do you mind telling me what airmail is?
Okay, so it basic. I do my book, so just get a copy of the
Okay,
book and you'll
perfect.
see. So airmail is how all mail travels around our country. It goes in the air. So they created routes, and back then flying, we're talking about over 100 years ago, and the idea of flying mail from different routes was kind of a foreign thing. There wasn't a lot of, we're talking about there wasn't a lot of avionics at the time. But so early, and in the military was actually tasked with that from the original general postmaster. So again, most mail, when you wanted to send mail, it was Pony Express. In other words, you sent mail and it would get to somebody in New York in about a week or
I
two.
think that's a
And
Christmas
so-
movie.
No, I don't think it was a Christmas movie. So anyways, it's just, I wouldn't think it would be a thing, but the Smithsonian actually had a wax figure of him in it, the Postal Museum, for a very long time. I don't, still
Did
is.
they give it to you when they were?
They
in the
gave
museum?
no, it's weird. So for a while they would put different things, and they had it in the Postal Smithsonian Museum, and then they offered it to my grandparents. They're like, "Here, do you want the wax figure of your dead dad?" You know what I mean? And it's like, no, I think we'll donate. So they donated it to something else. So I can't remember.
They said no.
I don't think they wanted a wax figure of him in the
Yeah.
house, but it was donated back to something else.
I
and-
relate to this. A long time ago, they cremated my cousin Thomas Edison, and they tried to put him in a
Relate to
ceramic
Oh,
box.
and-
So
and
Shohei
give it to my-
Ohtani,
and he lit up
Oh,
a light bulb
guys.
from his ashes. Okay. This
If you
episode's
have stayed
going
with us
great.
so
Where
far,
are
we just want to
How would
congratulate
you feel if
and
your
thank
kids
you.
gave away your wax statue?
There is something like that. It's strange. I've got some weird things. My grandparents on my mom's side have a very interesting
Okay,
story.
This
we
is
can talk
going
about
to be a
sometime.
good conversation.
They rub shoulders with A-list celebrities.
Let me
It was
wrap
interesting.
my note
Yes.
up
Oh.
on Shohei Ohtani because we were talking about that.
Is that what we were talking about?
So Stephen A., the guy who talks like this all the time, he's the kind of
Like,
What was that? What was that? What kind of? What
You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
And his hairline's
Like
up
Booker
here.
T?
I don't know what that is. Okay.
So he
I pity the fool.
that's exactly right. He
Wow.
was in the same episode of First Take.
No words.
This show that he hosts, in the very same episode, he said he was saying
Do it in
how
your
it's
voice,
bad
not
for
his.
it's bad for baseball that the best player can't speak English.
Yeah.
And
That's
so-
basically what he was saying, and he was trying to say it from a marketing angle. It's not great for
The
growing.
clip,
it. Oh,
clip
it's
that I
so
heard was
bad.
the clip that I heard was this, and this is
Oh.
if you're listening, this is not like live audio. I know it's going to sound a lot like him. He said, the best player in baseball can't have a translator. It was. I can't believe he said it.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
very.
Was he? Now that
insensitive,
this matters,
In
was he
this-
saying it in a joking way or
No.
no?
It
He was
was not
saying that
joking.
it's not beneficial for baseball as an American pastime,
Right.
as a sport, to grow their base when the best player can't speak English. And really, I think, like, be able to connect with the crowd or the audience as
But
well. I
honestly,
think that's what he was trying to say.
That's part
but
of the
man,
guy's mystique is that he doesn't speak English or can't speak well enough. So it's
he's an
kinda cool.
incredible player and person. Like when you say,
Yeah.
like I was pulling
Nice
for
guy.
him the whole time. I was
Yeah.
like, please, I want to see
Smiley,
him
yeah.
destroy it. And I was kind of bummed he went out in the first round.
The guy. A side note: he doesn't even take batting practice. He's the best hitter in Major League Baseball. And that at the home run derby,
He's hit
that was
33 homers
in the
before
first half.
in the first half.
That
There's-
was his first time taking batting practice this year. Which, if you
Which made
ever
it-
play baseball, you know that's
Wow.
ridiculous. Anyway,
he is insanely gifted.
in the same episode, Stephen A. talks about the Nigerian basketball team.
Beating USA.
Did you hear that?
Oh, I know they did. Yeah.
No. Did you hear what he said?
I didn't hear what he said.
He said he was talking about their names and he was trying to read it and he goes, whatever his name is.
Oh.
And wouldn't pronounce his name. I mean, it was a bad day
that's
for Stephen A.
not
Real
good.
bad. And so the last couple days he's been issuing apologies.
Oh.
And I don't know if it's
His
about
apologies.
how
His,
aggressive he talks.
his video apology was not good either.
I don't know if it's like him just talking so like larger than life.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound like he's saying sorry.
Doesn't
at all.
well, he wasn't in his video.
I'm
'cause
so
his-
sorry
his
because I feel like
His video wasn't really an apology. I think it was more of an explanation / excuse for this is what I was really saying. So stop
Yeah.
trying to twist it. But I think
Yeah.
then more the heat came. It was a written apology that was posted. That was.
And I don't know. I
wonder if
think
his
that it's
upper
very.
management made him do that.
It was very fascinating to watch them ESPN try to circle back on that whole thing yesterday, and to watch Stephen A. try to circle back, and to watch like social media hold him accountable.
Yeah,
and it's this weird mixture because what a lot of Stephen A. was saying, trust me, I'm sorry because I'm a black man and I've experienced this before, so trust me because I'm black. I'm a black man. He said that over and over again in his apology, which I'm sure that does hold some weight, but at the same time, there was a lot of other. Black people, Emmanuel.
No, I didn't know about. He's another broadcaster.
H.O.?
He won. Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or am
I think so.
mixing two people together.
Emmanuel. He's the guy that
The
he
guy
won
who
an
does
award for.
the conversations, uncomfortable
Yes.
conversations
Yep.
with the black.
Yeah.
Man. He was holding Stephen A. Smith accountable, and it was just because
Wow.
he's Nigerian too,
Yeah.
and it was just this whole thing. So
Firestorm.
I don't know. I think that's gonna be a fascinating cultural thing to see play out. I don't, obviously want people to, forgive people and want people to be, apologetic and
Not
treat
cancel
people nice.
him, but
I think we're past cancel culture. What do you guys think?
Ooh,
we'll find out with
I-
Stephen A.
I think we will be. I don't know that we are.
I think we're past it.
You do?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's.
What have you
I don't think
seen?
we're past it. Maybe I think we've surpassed the climax of it.
Maybe. Because time will tell. I don't know how to.
I
don't
just
know how to
don't
prove
think
that.
people are cancelable
What?
anymore.
Cancelable.
Yeah, like you look at
Cancelable?
Roseanne Barr. Okay,
Yeah.
she was for sure canceled, but she also still has a platform. Mm-hmm. So did you really cancel her? You know what I mean? Is she really
If
canceled?
you lose employment based on something, I would say you are canceled. Doesn't necessarily mean you would
Well,
lose
you
your
were
platform.
fired.
That's what I'm saying.
Doesn't mean you're
I would
canceled.
say same thing. Fired,
No, I
canceled.
think canceled is more your influence. Like we're not listening to you anymore. We're not
Canceled
following
is
you
social.
anymore.
Canceled is I'm gonna socially blacklist you.
Cancel,
Right.
yeah, but no. But real cancel
I
culture
have-
usually has financial and other implications. I think about, for example, here's an example, right? We go back during the political climate, and there was a certain pastor of a larger church down in the South that had posted or had liked a few of Donald Trump's posts or something that it
Very
created
conservative posts.
very conservative posts that turned into a firestorm that ended up having contracts where they had locations at their church canceled. Like they were, I mean, that's when I think of cancel, like they were canceled. So, I mean, I'm sure there's firestorm, but it wasn't from his own platform and his own people. It was from the media and surrounding things, and they lost buildings and facilities and things that they were using for the church because of it. So I guess I think about that when I think of canceled more than I do you lose your influence. I think about losing your job, losing that kind of platform, usually media. But I don't know. Maybe we're past it. That'd be great.
What do you think?
I don't think we're past it, but I hope that you're right that we're getting past the peak of it. I think coming out of this year, I think with everything that happened last year, I mean, good and bad, to raise awareness to things, I think that whole people realizing how much they can leverage that side of things, whether through social media or through influence or through canceling, I think there's certain issues that people are actually just now realizing, okay, we can jump on the bandwagon to leverage this to further our agenda.
Do you think Donald Trump should be banned off of all his social media accounts? Any volunteers to go first? Tim?
Here, I'll go back. I'll step back. I don't want to necessarily just address that one person, him, but I think there's a bigger concern over individual companies, and yes, they're privately held, who have the control to say who is banned and who isn't banned. So I think to me, a bigger issue comes down to that type of, I guess, dictating what is heard and what isn't heard. I think that's a bigger issue. I think it's a bigger question right now.
Yeah. I don't think that,
You saw Donald Trump sued
yes.
Did he sue?
big tech, quote
Big tech?
unquote,
Right.
Yeah.
for censorship and all sorts
Yeah.
of things like that. They're looking for people to that big announcement he made the other day.
Right.
Did you see that?
I didn't. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big.
If it's on
his
social
big
media, I
story.
didn't see it, so someone has to tell me.
Well, he's not on social media, so
So I guess so. It was on some other form of medium. Good point. What was it? What was
you
it?
and Donald Trump are similar. in
We
that
are
way.
similar, and that is the only way we're similar.
He
So-
rode horseback through a lot of towns throwing out the news. You must not have been around when he did it.
I wasn't there.
He
that
said
day.
he delivered that news via airmail.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, your
That's-
stepdad.
Man, you hit that joke.
Great
out of the park,
grandfather.
like Babe
well
Ruth.
done, though.
Well,
you-
today we're talking about none of
What are we
these
talking
things.
about?
I
Well,
just
that's
wanted
great.
to- there's
What
a couple-
about
We
you?
haven't really like.
Yeah. What about you?
What do you mean? What about
What
me?
do you think? You think Donald Trump should be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the Twitter machine?
I think if he was smart, he would start a TikTok.
He was trying to. There's been a whole uprising of a totally different platform.
What would that look like?
I'm trying. There's another platform. What is it? Have you heard of it?
Talking about
TikTok.
Parlor?
No. No, it wasn't
Parler's
Parler.
the conservative
It wasn't
one.
Parler. There was another one I thought that they were. Someone
I
was
understand.
investing
You're
in.
thinking about MySpace. That's older.
Do you have him?
It's good to have you back. It really is. I need a little bit of Russ in my life. Oh, do you think he should be on it?
I think that.
Wow.
I'll tell you. I
do think he should be.
I
on
do.
it.
I don't
I
think there
think
should be
so, too.
censorship for it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Whether I
I
agree
think
with
that-
some or all of his, I don't think there should be the censorship of it.
I think it's one of those catch-22s. It's like, yeah, you banned him off of social media, but you haven't taken away his platform. You've only empowered a base of people to feel more strongly about what he's saying if you think he's lying. And so let everybody have their fair share. And I think one point that they make that I agree with the Trump people and that office that he had, like they always say, well, Hamas has a Twitter and
Yeah.
blatant
Right.
Yeah.
self-proclaimed terrorist
That's a
organizations
great
have
point.
Twitters. And
Yeah.
so people that, torture and kill homosexuals and or run countries that have no women's rights, they have
Right.
Twitters. So why can't he have a Twitter? Because you would say that he's lying and spreading misinformation. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like,
Pretty valid point.
I think that you get into really scary territory right there. And when Bernie Sanders is saying that Trump should not be suspended off of Twitter, I think that
Yeah.
we need to have a national discussion.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think they have been. I think it's the whole big tech and those companies. That's been a dialogue in Congress for a while. I don't think it's what they're focused on, but whether or not, I mean,
I will say this doesn't make me afraid. Like I think
Yeah.
that some people are like, oh my gosh, they're shadow banning everybody. Like I honestly think that social media is people assume that it is the only way to communicate with people. And it's just not. There's so many different platforms out there that you can.
well, what's
still
interesting
use
is even if Donald
and build
Trump does
influence
not
over.
have Twitter or some of those, he can still put things out and say them in the regular media to the point where everybody else will then post it.
Yeah,
Like
every
he
time
had-
he
like
puts
he-
out
True,
like he
but
has, you know-
that's true. But I mean, he tried from the desk of Donald Trump, which flopped immediately. So
Yeah.
I agree with you in some
But he
sense.
does put out
that-
those statements that, and every time he does put out a statement,
saying media
every
covers it.
news,
Right.
every news organization, it's on the Today Show, it's on NBC, it's on CNN,
Which means it's on every social media platform.
But you can't ignore the fact or deny the fact that at least for a few months there, he did not have the daily coverage of his voice being heard, and his voice died down dramatically.
Well, he was
there for
playing a
few
lot of
months.
golf.
Yes, but we don't know what would have happened
Largo.
if he would have had it. I think it's really interesting. I agree with you. I think censorship's a really bad road to go down, and I think there's people that you could always argue, okay, why would this person, like you said, Hamas, or I mean, you had the influencer. What was it a few weeks ago that tweeted something complimentary about Hitler?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but I do think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and what people have been tweeting through the whole Israel and Palestine
Yes.
Yeah.
thing about. I mean,
What-
there's
what-
just
It
it's a
is new
complete double
territory,
standard.
though, because, like,
Yeah.
you know, in theoretically, these platforms are supposed to be
Theoretically.
completely utilitarian, and so there's supposed to be a place where anybody can use them, and there's no agenda coming from the platform. At the same time, these guys that own these platforms, understandably, should feel a responsibility. To where if what they're using, what they're providing is being used in a harmful way, at some point it is understandable to where it's like, okay, this is a utilitarian. We believe in free speech. Okay, if this is being used in a way that's causing harm, what response? I mean, these are the questions I would be asking. What responsibility do I have in this moment as a part of this? So it is. I do think it's a little bit grayer
Yeah.
than we realize it is.
Well, I think I agree.
And I
with
do
you.
understand back in January 6th why there was at least the conversation. I'm not saying right or wrong. I do understand that moment why there was at least an immediate knee-jerk reaction of, oh, wow, what's our part to play?
Yeah.
We've had a lot of people putting pressure from both sides.
Yeah. See,
So-
now I disagree with I don't think it's Twitter's job to mediate that. I don't think it's. So what are you going to do? You're going to let's keep Donald Trump off of Twitter, but let's allow articles from CNN that talk about his last couple weeks in office. Let's allow people to paint a truth of what's happening and not him to give an opportunity to present what he believes is truth. I'm not saying that he's right about everything. I'm just saying that idea is very anti-American and dangerous to go down, understanding the complete double standard that, like, with our gut. Okay, so for example, and I'm not trying to get into a super political conversation, but about January 6th, if January 6th was something that happened because of Donald Trump, guess what? Guess who doesn't get to make that decision? Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Guess who does? The checks and balances of our country. We already have a governmental system that's supposed to take care of all of those things.
Yeah, but it can't in a digital age. I mean, checks and balances through legislature is something that takes weeks and months. And like we talked about in our 2 weeks, when we talked about the digital dilemma that we're in of misinformation, we've never been in this sphere where someone in the highest places of power can say something and no one knows what's true or false. And when things that are adamantly false are said that incite violence. I agree it's a dangerous road to go down. I'm not saying they were right or wrong to do that, but I do understand how in certain moments, if you have people that are in a high place of leadership, if they are promoting what is understood to be false and the owners of that feel like that is inciting violence and harm and danger, I do think it's understandable for them to at least consider and ask, what is my responsibility as the owner of this company through which this violence is happening?
I think that would be great if that happened to any other organization or entity other than Donald Trump, but it doesn't. Is that what they're saying the litmus test is for having a Twitter account that's active? Like, is the presence of violence? Is it a lie? What are the? Well, I would double down on and ask more questions as to what's that standard? What's the Donald Trump standard? Because if it,
Yeah,
he's
we're
not-
in new territory.
He's also not the only politician that's ever lied to us,
Right.
right?
Yesterday.
Right. So that's what I mean. Is he the only politician that's ever said a lie? Is he the only
Exactly.
politician that's ever said something that's driven people to violence? Is it? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that what he did was right. I'm saying that it does take months and years and people who can shape public opinion to paint a different picture. Not let's let Twitter and Facebook and Instagram funnel what does and doesn't go out so they can shape public opinion. It's like it's going to take an equal voice of influence to present an alternate option to a Donald Trump for the people that follow him, right? And I think that's going to take another person who can persuade and who can lead. That's a person, but it's not going to be Twitter,
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, going back to Matt's argument when he was here, he's done all his PhD research on the fact that as much as we would like to buy into this notion that social media is neutral, it's not. It's not just neutral for people to see stuff and say, oh, this may or may not. Like every single person is bombarded by algorithms and bombarded by, we've never been in this age of misinformation. And yes, not every lie can be vetted and not every violence can be stopped. But I guess what I'm saying, and again, I'm not saying they were right to ever suspend him, and I don't think he should be suspended now. And I do agree that there are double standards on both sides. But in that area of those extraordinary circumstances in which we've not had an attack on our own, they understandably probably feel an ownership over America more than they do what happens in other countries. Other countries, they don't have free speech. They don't need to worry about what Hamas is saying because they have their own propaganda through the media. So it's not like that's going to affect, it, to the degree of what the leader of that specific nation is that they are operating their social media platforms under. So you look back to that specific day, and we hadn't had an attack on, on our democracy or on the Hill since 18, whatever it was. To me, I guess I'm just saying I can at least appreciate how that would drive them to ask the kind of questions you're saying of what is our role in this.
Yeah, it's a really hard.
Well, what's interesting is you have no historical experience to compare it to, because even if you look and go, okay, well, in this particular moment of history, there was this kind of attack or this kind of violence or uprising, whatever. You never had social media platforms at that time have a play in it, and I think it's a very interesting question moving forward, because as much, like you said, they're not neutral in regards to the algorithms. So they've written algorithms so that they can make money, right? They're not neutral. In other words, you're going to see a lot more of whatever it is that you normally search for,
Right.
But the challenge is that you also have people who are running these organizations that are privately held that have their own subject opinions on what is fact and isn't fact,
Right.
Or you know what I mean? Like that's even a big question today. Is what's true
Right.
anymore?
Right.
And now we're arguing over what's fact and what's not fact anymore.
Right.
That used to never be a thing, and now we are. Now we're going, that's not true. Yes, it is. That's not true. These are the facts.
I think the misunderstanding would be to say that information in the past hasn't been siloed or slanted. There's been propaganda that's been pushed for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's just the speed and the rate.
Yeah.
But who's to say
And the
that's-
manipulation of us.
Yes, but who's
Psychologically.
to say, maybe it's just happening at such a rate that we are more aware of the manipulation now than ever. Because the manipulation has been happening for a long time. It's human nature. I mean, it's the right-wing papers and the left-wing papers. Back when it used to be papers. Now it's just on your phone, and instead of the papers in your town, and instead of just the 4 that you read every day, it's the 5 different social media and news apps that you have on your phone. And it's the same, but it's different. I would actually say that the positive spin is that people, when they absorb news in 2021, they hold it lighter. I
You think so?
I think that
I
will
think
be,
the new generation
How about
will.
this? Yes, I agree. I think the young people, I think people around my age, the shift I've seen, I think that the older generation that's used to, basically, I think there's a cutoff of when you can remember reading a newspaper, a physical newspaper.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you are responding to this age of tech differently than my generation and younger. I think they are holding it much more loosely instead of aligning values with a news organization or an entity. I think it's people are finding these individuals and kind of forming an opinion based on a conglomerate of sources. And so I do think there's a wisdom that we could learn from a younger generation in the way we hold news right now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it's all a bad thing, but I do think it's just it's just a horrendous precedent in my mind to ban people. Like
Yep.
sometimes we just have
I
to
agree.
let things play out because, and I'm not trying to make. I know this is an argument that one side makes, but there was an attack on the Capitol, and also last summer we were burning down police precincts. Okay, I'm not. What I'm saying is both are bad. Both are government entities, institutions, and both are statements. Okay, so we need to go.
Sure, but I think the argument would be both were horrible, but the argument that they would make is one was based on what they would call misinformation coming from the top down. The other was the disillusionment and anger of a group of people based on stuff they had actually experienced for a long time.
Right, but I don't necessarily. That's assuming that burning down the precincts was an actual picture of that disillusionment, or just. I don't think that the majority of people that were disillusioned were the people that were burning down.
Absolutely
buildings.
not.
You know what I mean?
Right, but I think they would argue that people weren't burning down buildings because someone in power was spreading false information. I think that's what their argument would be. That would be the difference.
My point is that the presence of violence, is that what deems banning on Twitter? Because I think that if we're going to say that the presence of violence, there was something violent and people broke into the Capitol and did this or that, that's what we would say. Because, okay, if that's the standard, then we got to have a standard, not just because we don't like Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And that's the part where I think that is going to be, hopefully, I mean, Trump doesn't have a great history hiring lawyers that really do a really great job for him.
Yeah.
But I hope for the sake of the country we can actually have a 2021 conversation about tech, free speech.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I mean, we are definitely wherever
You think
side
the government's
you fall
going
on.
to? You think the government's going to be able to manipulate, change that?
Oh, I hope that people a
They
lot
have in the
smarter than me can
past.
figure that out.
They have in the past. So you have organizations that had monopolies in a market, and the government would come in and say you can't monopolize in the market, even if you paid and put all the infrastructure in. So you have WorldCom, you have different ones that had the internet, or they passed laws that allow, hey, even if you put in the underground utilities to this, you have to now allow other companies to come and go sell their product on your stuff, because what happened was that infrastructure became so necessary by the country that the government stepped in and said, "Wait a minute," and you can't own this monopoly.
Well, you'll have to.
You can make the same argument about social media stuff.
Yeah,
that has become
it's a
such
utility.
and I think that is what's going on, and those are the questions. And so it's interesting because you got private companies that have come up with new ideas and private stuff, and they get so big and have so much effect on the world. Like we see that it literally has impact on the world. The government steps in and then says, "Wait a minute, there need to be regulations." And so that's going to be the interesting thing, is if the government is going to enforce regulations, and if that happens, then I think you'll see change. I don't think you'll see a change until the government does it.
That's a really great point, bringing up the monopolization of, let's just say the country, but really the world. You think about the way that Amazon's going right now,
Yeah.
and you think about, so Amazon bought Whole Foods, right? And they're attempting to create a model of where these social media companies kind of own a conglomerate of things. It's where you shop. It's where you spend most of your time. Wouldn't you say I mean, how could these social media companies not be considered a monopoly these days?
Oh,
Google,
yeah.
Apple,
Oh.
Facebook, who owns Instagram,
Yeah.
and whatever else they own. And
Oh, it is. It's a monopoly on information. And it's a monopoly on how information's processed, and it's a monopoly on marketing. That's a big deal.
I mean, we don't talk about that a lot these days, but isn't it? I mean, there's a government contract that's being written right now. They're creating some sort of like super cloud for the Pentagon, and Microsoft was in on it and won the bid, and then they backed out, or there was some disagreement about something, and so here you got Google and you got AWS, which is Amazon, and you got Microsoft back in on the bidding to host the government cloud, and you just think, man, these are just the biggest of the biggest companies that that control most of everything. And so my point when I was talking about Amazon and Whole Foods is that they're saying that Facebook is looking to buy Target.
Wow.
Ooh.
And
Really?
yeah, and so there's that's a model that once
What is the point of? I wonder why.
even Spotify they were looking at buying different becoming one of those big. I don't know. I think in my mind a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
So none of that was what we were going to talk about.
I know. Why do we talk about all that?
I like it though. I
Okay.
think it's valuable.
Current events. This was just current events.
Current events, but I do want to talk about. Maybe we can just focus the last 20 minutes or so of our conversation. I was talking with my barber today. We were talking about all of the help wanted signs that we see around.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, I'm sure you know somebody. Maybe you own a company and you're looking for work. There's just this really strange, tectonic shift in the workforce these days. And I think leading up to this point in time, and who knows even when information comes out a couple weeks from when we recorded this to when we release it. But I think the assumption was that we're just recovering from a season of mass layoffs and unemployment benefits that have been increased to help kind of help people through the pandemic, and those benefits were extended. And I think that there's just been we've all assumed that was why we've had this shortage of workers in different places. But now that those benefits are drying up, we've seen that companies are still having trouble hiring people.
Yep.
And I know, I was just talking to a business owner the other day. It said they usually operate around 120 employees, and now they only have 78.
Wow.
And they've got these really great jobs that are open and require skill, but they'll pay for you to learn the skill. And people, there's nobody anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that wants those jobs. And so maybe speak into that. What do you think is happening? What's your take on it? Is it just an unemployment thing? Is it just a people don't want to work thing? Is it laziness?
I think there's a lot of economists and other people that are actually trying to figure it out right now. I've actually read some stuff on it, and it was kind of fascinating to see how many. There was a study, a survey that just came out. And again, it's a small sample survey. I think they surveyed 5,000 people nationwide. It just got released on Forbes, I think today.
Really?
And it was and so they were asking people that had not gone back to work. One of the questions was, what is the primary reason you did not go back to work and remain on unemployment benefits? And they found that about 45% of the people that rejected jobs, a lot of people rejected job offers during the pandemic. About 45% of people that rejected the job offers in the pandemic said it had something to do with financial means. But only, it turned out that only about 13%, I was reading this survey, but only about 13% of them said that it was more beneficial for them to remain on unemployment than it was to go back to work. And so I think a big debate that's been going on right now around this has been, okay, is the problem that we're giving people money and so they're not incentivized to go back to work? Or is it, and who's been the most impacted? Low wage, low hour type of jobs? Or is it kind of the opposite side because we're not paying people enough? And so there's two. The political argument has come back to, we got to stop giving them money. In fact, you see states right now, several of them, there's 26 different states that are actually cutting short the additional unemployment benefits early because they think those are the reasons why people aren't going back to work. That's a few of the states, and it depends on what political side you're on, and how people in that argument. Whereas other people are arguing, go, see, this is why we need to raise the minimum wage, because it's fascinating. I think there's just a lot of nuance to why it is. I think if you see those stats and you go, it's really there was an economist for Bank of America that came out and said you had to be making less than about $32,000 a year for it to actually be more advantageous to stay on unemployment benefits than it would be to go back to work.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So it's not that it was like, well, you're making a ton of money doing this, so it does seem like the industry that has hit the most, they actually call it the leisure and hospitality, which covers your service, your food service, where all those, that is the industry that's been hit the hardest. It does have the lowest paying jobs, mostly, of other ones. That and government. Government was like number 2, and I was looking this up, mostly because of educational. There's been mass layoff because of educational stuff. They think a lot of that will come back as people go back to school and things like that, but I don't know. It's interesting. I think
do you think it is?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think I'll throw out a few. Just
you are a pastor, so
yeah.
what
So
has
I
God-
obviously know a lot.
What has God told you about it?
Yeah. I'll throw out a few that I kind of 1 or 2 reasons that I saw during the pandemic that I think is very real still. I think there's a percentage of it that's fear. There's still people that are very worried and concerned. There's a bigger percentage, which when they did this one survey, I was looking, the number one thing was not, it was not enough money. The number one thing was childcare. So I remember during the pandemic, that was a legitimate issue of parents trying to like, hey, your kids can't go to school anymore. Well, how am I supposed to work?
Yeah.
And so childcare is a bit of an issue.
That was horrible.
I think too, because you're talking about many of the people that are in the demographic of working in probably those lower wage jobs are probably younger. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of mental. It's been very taxing for especially the younger generation. Mm-hmm. I think through this season. I think there's the re-entry into the workplace is maybe a little bit scary or whatever. I also think, here's a real simplistic answer, 21 to 30 days to form a new habit. I think, just like anything else, why do I say this? Because I see the same thing in church attendance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay? People, and I've had conversations with people from our church who've like, yeah, man, I need to get back. It's like, and they were like, man, it's just really hard. We just got into this habit, and then I've got this thing and this thing that's going on. And so I wonder, I've seen it in like all of my friends who are in ministry that I talk to them, and the average of people back in person attending is still somewhere like under 65% of what it was, 50 to 65% of what it was pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so I just wonder in that same, and I know it's different than going to church is different than work and needing that, because I think as soon as these unemployment insurance benefits are going to run up real soon, you're going to see an influx of jobs, but they're saying it's still nowhere near. We're still like, even if you have an influx of those people who said, they're in that wage, they go, I got to make a job, I got a job and go back. We're still down millions and millions of jobs. And so I just wonder how much of this plays into people got into a habit of, I didn't go to work, or they're now looking at a new way of working. Hey, I don't want to go work at some place for 40 hours a week. Like I'm looking for a job where I can do remote, where I can do hybrid, where I don't have to go in all the time. And so as long as you got money coming in, you'll take your time to.
Do you think it's a temporary thing?
Yeah, I do. The job situation and the economy, I do. I think it'll play itself out. I'm not freaked out about it. I really do. I think everything.
Because you're not in the food service industry.
I think you'd freak out if you're in the food service industry. But here's what I know about America: we will never stop buying food from fast food and restaurants.
It's true.
We will never. I do think a lot of that. But it's just like what happens with markets, what happens with other things, they always end up balancing each other out. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean it stays the same, but there's something that always corrects. So we have a very self-correcting economy.
I think it's a huge deal. I think that I think this is going to be one of the many things that will forever be changed.
You are
because of the
so
last
hyperbolic.
Year.
When he
I
talks,
am.
it is the biggest thing that happened in the
No. You're wrong.
21st century.
It is though, because all of the things that have right now.
Yes.
You can work you can work for any company anywhere in the country or the world.
I can?
Yes.
You mean if you get employed by them?
If you're looking for a job, no longer
Yeah.
does your geography have anything to do with your employment?
No, I don't necessarily agree with that. So if you want to work at McDonald's, you tell me your geography doesn't play. You want to work at Walmart, you're telling me it doesn't.
I'm saying that you can go online and take you 5 seconds to apply for a job where you can work from your house, whether that's a customer service job, you don't have to go to a call center to answer phones anymore.
But you act like that's the only kind of employment there is. You'll never do away with service employment. You'll never do away with hospitality employment.
New category of work that has been created because of what everybody has had to learn, which is how to operate and function remote. And so now there is a whole shiny new category of jobs called remote. And so I can live in Columbus, Ohio. I was just talking to one of my friends who works for a tech startup company out of San Francisco. Works remote.
You can if you work for a tech startup company out of San Francisco. I totally
it's
agree.
A healthcare company.
I get it. I agree.
You can work for Google.
Oh.
You can work for Facebook.
Absolutely.
You can work for
Those
MLB.
are hospitality and service
You can
departments.
Work for,
That's where most of the jobs were lost.
But that's what there's a whole new category of jobs that has opened up that is going to affect the job category you're talking about.
Sure.
There's new options. Even look at, you can be, it's a new economy. You can be a DoorDash driver, an Uber driver, a Lyft driver. There's so many things you can do. This is a whole new world.
But that
we live
existed
in.
before.
Not
being
to the
an
scale
Uber
that it does
driver,
right now.
being all those kind of drivers.
Not to
they
the scale
existed.
that it does right now. And I think what you said about childcare is very real.
Sure.
I don't know. I think I know Russ agrees with me. I see a look on his face.
No.
This is a
I
big
don't think
deal,
you've made
man.
a
This
point.
is a real big
It's
deal.
a big deal, but I don't think we've solved the problem.
Well, I didn't
And
want to
don't
make
think
the point because I want to make the last point on Russ yours.
Oh. What point am I riffing on?
There is
on
none. I
that
think the
last
question-
Right,
I think-
me or him?
It's not either or. You did not even say anything to what I just said.
See, I'll just tell you, this is
Straw
not
man.
without answering the question. I saw a classic case of miscommunication here just now because I think what you
he asked
originally
me a question, and I answered
well,
it.
what he originally said was that any job can be affected or can be remote or can be transferable anywhere in the world. I think,
And I said no.
and I think more the point he was making, which I agree with, is I do believe this past year has radically shifted the options and the playing field and the economy of how jobs work and what kind of jobs there are. I agree with that. I think you took what he said literally to mean that every job's transferable.
It was a literal statement.
So that's my observation.
It was a literal statement. He said you could work anywhere. Geography does not matter anymore. I'm
You
like,
can't work anywhere. You can work anywhere.
from your place,
But
from where you live.
can't-
Yes, you can
You can't
move.
say like, oh, if I'm currently employed at McDonald's, you go in and tell your boss that I'm working from home today. You can't do that.
That's what.
But
that
I'm
was
saying-
my point.
but
But those
if-
are the jobs in question.
Okay,
They're the
can I-
majority
you
of the
can answer-
problems.
then you can. Here's the deal. For the season, what was our unemployment up to when at the height of this thing? 20%, 19%.
No, we were at 20.5 million
Okay,
people.
so-
I don't know what the
and
percentage
one
was.
third of restaurants, if it happened the way they said it was on track to happen, shut down.
And so those people aren't going back to food service is the problem. But what I'm saying is,
So you think those buildings are going to stay empty, and that there are not other restaurants that are going to come in and replace them?
I
There's
didn't
not
say that.
There's not the demand anymore.
I'm saying that if what'd you say? 1/3 of restaurants.
One third.
Okay.
1/3 of local restaurants.
So there's
will shut
1/3
down.
of food service employees that could.
Do you buy that stat? Go drive around here. You should see a third of all of the restaurants / whatever here. Let's just look in any town. Do you think a third of them are shut down?
No, but we're also in Mid-America.
Okay.
So that stat is taking in consideration California.
well,
and
California
New York.
would be 100% of them were shut. No, they're not.
And
But-
I don't. And then again,
How
that's
did
what
you stay alive in California?
Dude, so awful. You
I mean,
didn't.
Did you see
left.
that one
You
video
left.
of the woman who she got shut? She built this huge patio.
I heard it.
For the outdoor
Yeah.
dining.
And they shut her down. They spent all this money.
They said you could do it outdoor. You can
Yep.
open outdoors. So she spent all this money on this nice patio.
Yep.
So she could operate outdoors, and then they changed their mind
They
and said
did.
they're shut down.
Oh,
Governor changed
listen,
their mind.
I was in
airport.
There, I was in
in
airport
Charlotte.
in Charlotte. You
And
remember?
Sorry, I just wanted to say it before you did because I remembered.
I don't know if I'm insulted or complimented.
No,
So,
you did. You met a
I-
business owner who actually lives a different place. He has 5 locations, and he actually flies back
you
to
were
California.
telling it so wrong.
Sorry. Go ahead,
I
tell
met
your
a
story.
business person that's 5 restaurants. No, but seriously, I met a guy that's
Because you were
at
reading a book
at
on Barack Obama, and he said, wow, is that a good book?
Yes, you
Sorry.
listen. I'm going to stand up on Sunday and start telling your stories for you.
Sorry. Okay.
Anyways, so that came across really aggressive.
Yeah, I did.
So
What
I'm
is
right,
today
aren't
about?
I? Aren't I
You
right?
are right.
You are definitely not right.
Mostly.
Yes.
You are so wrong.
But
It's not funny.
listen, I did run into a restaurateur from L.A. in a Charlotte airport that basically said, and he was right in the middle politically, but he was just talking about how Governor about how Newsom just kept they kept shifting everything, and he just talked about the frustration of all of his employees losing their jobs. Told me honestly about some of the darker stories that he said were not on the news about people being shot while they're trying to open the restaurants, and talked about the inconsistency and just the sheer madness of what the food industry is going through, especially in places like California, where he would look over and malls would be packed. I mean, this is back in October. Malls would be packed. People would be going, full of stores, but they could not have outdoor seating, even 10 feet apart with glass shields. And Newsom literally went on record as saying, well, I don't know about the science behind it, but in my gut, I just know it's dangerous.
Maybe we could do a whole other episode and interview a Democrat that thinks Newsom was also horrible.
Yes.
Because talk about a guy who's just
But I think
unanimously
that's
hated.
probably half of them.
That guy.
No, but I'm
he has
just saying.
destroyed. He is in my opinion, has been in the middle of destroying California over this past year.
Yes.
But he said it. But people don't understand too the amount of money it takes for restaurant owners to prep for outdoor seating. Thousands of dollars.
No, I heard it was
thousands
like
of dollars.
That one story, that one lady. I think
I heard
it's been
$250,000.
So he told me there was times him and all his friends that were in the restaurant business would spend thousands of dollars to prep for outdoor patio stay, which they, in my opinion, should have been able to do almost all along. And then the day before, Governor Newsom would change it and say, "No, I just don't feel good about it." There would still be stores packed, grocery stores packed, everything.
Which is why a lot of people are moving out of California.
Oh my gosh!
Mass exodus leaving California because
And New York, New York and California.
because they want to move to states that are free.
I want
Can I riff on just one thing you said that I think is because I think it's very layered why people are not going back to work. And I just want to say this. I brought this up 2 weeks ago. You get really nervous.
Why?
I don't know why you got
I
nervous.
didn't get nervous about this.
You said that people are not going to work because they're all lazy.
I didn't say that. You said that. That's why I
I
got
did
nervous.
not say that. You thought that's what I
I'm
was
pretty
saying.
sure that's why we got nervous
I did
because I was
not
like,
say that.
dang, I don't know why you said that.
I don't understand why somebody
I didn't
would
say
want to
that.
go back. But you did say something I think is interesting is talk about forming new habits. I heard something like the newest research is that it's 21 days to loosely begin to form a habit, 75 days to lock in a habit. And it is crazy to think about that people for 75 days, in our church context, it was over 75 days that were not on property on a Sunday morning or 75 days not going to work. It is fascinating to think about the new 75-day locked-in bad habits that formed and good habits that lost.
But do you guys think that it's mostly? You said you think it's mostly habitual.
What is?
You think people have just got into the rhythm of being at home, and so they aren't.
I think
going back to
think
work?
that's probably been one of the challenges of why some of them have not gone back to work is because it's hard to go back to work. And in this survey that Forbes put out, and what they didn't do it, but it was another company that did it. They showed on there that the people were admitting or saying that they are worse financially off now, even with unemployment, than they were in their jobs. But yet, that's not enough. What it shows is that wasn't enough of a motivator to get people to go back to work yet. So they were getting some money, but not all the money. But it wasn't enough to push people back. But I think if that's the case, I have to believe you have to be in a certain demographic, at least economically, that you can still survive doing that.
Sure. I do think, though, that that's been the prevailing theory. And I think that we're butting up to having to recognize a new reality that I think we're in our workforce. Sure. I think that most people don't like change. But I think a lot of people, whether they were we've shared a lot of articles back and forth or podcasts talking about how this is the year of transition for so many people. And I think that's people who there's a lot of people that left their jobs. That weren't just laid off and were looking for a new job, but that left their jobs and went to a new career field altogether or moved back closer to family. But what I'm saying is this has been a huge year of transition. And so I think that definitely part of it has probably been unemployment, but I think it's a more complicated transition that we're going through in our workforce than any of us could really understand right now. But one thing that I'm watching, my big theory that I think that there's just a huge adjustment going on in the entire workforce in general. I think you're seeing a rise of entrepreneurship. I think it's easier than ever to learn how to start your own business, I think that there's a generational shift in who's taking the realm as far as these or who's taking the leadership positions at a lot of these companies. I think that remote work has something to do with it. I think that people are really have a chance to take a deep breath and with all the mental health things that are going on to go, am I happy here? Everybody. That's the other thing with so many people hiring. Is that people who have jobs who just want different jobs or better jobs can go out and it's very competitive right now.
People have had a lot of time to think.
People have had a lot of time to think.
And
you're sitting at home.
I think there's definitely what will be interesting to watch is the economic implications of how that reality changes things, because
especially as it affects the middle class.
Well, it's going to drive a lot of weird things, right? So if people decide that they're going to be looking for different types of employment, ones that it's like, hey, I want to enjoy this, or I want to do remote, and I don't want to just settle if that's what they felt for the type of employment they were in before. And if you say that's in leisure and hospitality service industry, I think the question is going to be, that is never going to go away. So what's going to happen there? So that's going to be a great question, right? The only way to survive was going to be for them to raise their rates, what they're paying people.
Yeah.
Now, what does it look like when you're fast food, when you're retail, when everybody has to raise their rates, what they're paying? Guess what's going to happen? The cost of goods are going to go up through the roof, right? So now everything is going to get way more expensive.
We've always said that it's, okay, well, let's do the $15 minimum wage or $15 an hour minimum wage. It's like, well, there's nobody hiring that is, what's the minimum wage in Ohio? I think it's 8 something right now.
Yeah, I think it's
80 something. But that's the minimum wage. There is nobody. Anybody could get a job. McDonald's, I think, is hiring for $14 an hour right now.
Yeah, they're close. You will not find a job for $8 an hour.
Offering a sign-on bonus, Arby's, KFC, whatever, like entry-level job. Maybe it's not written in law, but the wages are going up.
Yep, they are.
But it doesn't seem like enough. I mean, are the wages going to go up more?
Well, I think the real question is going to be there's only so much money so McDonald's is only going to make so much money. They're only going to sell so much. That probably has not changed. They're probably selling just as many hamburgers. I bet you they're selling just as many. I mean,
well,
so the question,
but the
I think,
service
where
has
is
been different. Anywhere I've gone in the country and had a fast food experience, it's been
awful.
It has been.
You're sitting in a drive-through line forever, only to get your food messed up potentially, and then you're like, "What do I do?"
It has been awful everywhere.
It is also in that same way. It's affected the airline industry. Lack of workers, especially right now. The post-pandemic. Have you seen all the articles warning about travel right now? So many flights, record numbers of flights being canceled or delayed, and angry customers because people are now deciding they want to travel. They still are in that gap of people starting to sign back up to work, but they can't find enough workers, enough crews. Every service industry now has been suffering.
So the interesting is the ripple effect. What's going to happen? Like what I'm saying is that, okay, if you take a corporation, whether it be McDonald's or something, and they have a certain profit margin and they have certain payouts, okay, to people, well, where is that coming from? The extra expense. It's either going to get passed down to the consumer, or they're going to have to find other ways to innovate. And it's just going to be interesting to see. It will all shake itself out. It always does. It's just going to be interesting to see. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be a work revolution. But what I'm saying is that particular field will never go away here in America.
No, it will never go away.
And so what's going to happen when you starve it of people because everybody says, I don't want to go work there, I don't want to go work there, I want to go work here. Well, eventually here is going to be full.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really hard to get jobs here because everybody wants jobs here that are remote, that are doing this, that I want all that. And so you're going to end up with some very interesting economic situations.
I think it's going to take a couple years for those remote jobs to get full. There's just so many of them. I think the existence of remote jobs is, I think a lot of it's just temporary because I don't think psychologically it's going to be healthy for human beings to work at home. whether or not I think companies think that people want it. I think it's a mistake.
I think it only lasts so long. I mean, I talked to a couple people. I was just talking to some
think
people from
hybrid
the
could be
church.
here to
that-
stay.
Yeah,
well, I think
I
they
agree
are.
with that.
I was talking to some
4-day
some
work
fo-
weeks. I think.
That's a big one. Well, there was just a
Google just
did you see
invested
a big-
$100 million
Did you see a
into
big study
creating
on the
outdoor
4-day?
workspaces. And,
Yeah.
and
There's a
different
huge
doing it
environments,
study
working from
on a
home.
4-day work week.
Yeah,
I just
huge
did you
study.
read
You're
the
thinking about
article?
4-Hour Work Week by
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss.
No,
Question: How
4-day
often
work week.
do
That
you
was
used
done.
to
in-
eat Big Macs?
I don't eat Big Macs.
Oh, okay.
But where was it? Did you read the article? It was just recent. It was
I
it was like
heard people
it was
talk
it was a country. I feel like it was a smaller country in
Spain or Finland
no.
or something.
Yeah, I think it was almost like
Scandinavian.
Denmark. It was a Scandinavian country, but they literally, or is in I can't remember if it was in a city or whatever. But they did this where their government, like everything, was a 4-day work week. And they measured all kinds of different things. They did
I
this
remember
for a
this.
certain amount of time. It's
Yeah.
an article I just read. I wish I remember where it's from. But what they came back, they discovered was the actual, that not only was everybody happier, but they actually said with them being happier and everything, that the productivity was
Yeah.
higher.
Yeah.
And so the question in this article was, is this a direction that we're going to see a lot of people going? And then they said, it was like that same group that did that, said their next like challenge was like the 3-day work week. Like it was like we did 4 days, now we're going to go 3 days. So my question is, my question is this.
I'm gonna start working Monday through Wednesday.
Are you? If you keep, I get the 5 to 4 day, but the idea was, hey, everybody's happier, as seen, and productivity was up. It was a little bit, but it was up in 4 days versus 5. 3 days must be better than 4. 2 days must be better than 3. 1 day, at some point, I just wonder when we stop seeing work as a means for an income, but we actually find purpose and value in it. And we actually think that taking away too much of it is actually going to leave us in a state where we go, well, I don't know. How I'm not saying that I want my job or career to be my life, but I want to find value in what I do, meaning in what I do, purpose in what I do. And I think the big question people have today after this long pause or break is, I didn't have meaning in what I was doing here.
Yeah.
So I want to find meaning. But my question in that whole thing is, it just seems like the goal, we need to get down to less and less no one working. And I'm going, wait a minute, I actually think we're going to miss something.
Yeah.
I have a thought. I think that I never understood this till I had kids, but I was in that position where my work is filled with purpose and I love what I do. But even in that in that circumstance, I think as
Wasn't enough because you quit.
as Americans, I was fired. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. As Americans, I think we find our safety in work. And obviously financial safety, social safety, it's how we're almost forced into a social setting. Mm-hmm. But also it's a great escape from everything that's not going right in your, outside of your 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. Is that there has been, I'm in my first week of self-employment. Okay. And the hardest thing by far has been being around my kids as much as I'm around. It's been a couple days. I'm talking like this is the first some things just kind of where usually I'd be, all right, got to run to work real quick. They're losing their minds. Honey, can you take care of that? Or whether she does that and leaves me with the, however it works, I think that I would say that, and I'm somebody who my work has always been, I'm so blessed to say my work has always been filled with purpose.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that how I utilize my job hasn't always been healthy. Mm-hmm. And so I think what that study indicates and why I'm so full of anticipation for this next season of how work is going to go and how companies are going to respond or over-respond or overreach or underreact or however it all. I really am really excited to see how it all shapes up after Google does their $100 million hybrid work study, trying to make your remote people feel like they're in the office and give them an option to do both. And they'll roll your TVs around, or you can control your personal TV with a remote control and be around the groups of people you want to be in the office. You should see it. It's really cool. I think Today's Show was there. A modular office setting or working across the country completely remote. However, that lines up with the mental health component of what we've seen, how
Isolation and being alone.
However, that melts with all of the socioeconomic and the inflation that we're about to see and all of these things. I think that I do agree people are going, do I love what I do?
Mm-hmm.
And am I in love with the problem that I'm solving in the world? Because we're so hyper aware of the problems that exist. Am I in love with the problem I'm solving? I think it's a great question people are asking themselves, and I think everybody should ask that question. But I will say, we're going to say, well, I want to have a job that I have purpose in, but what the problem everybody's trying to solve is I need to stop weaponizing my job against my life, right? The people who their home life sucks, so they spend 60 hours in the office.
Yeah.
Right.
Or your office life sucks, so I just want to spend more time at home.
Yeah.
I just think that it's going to be an interesting
Yeah.
place that we land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the healthiest lives are always the most integrated lives. Boundaries matter, but I think sometimes boundaries are also in this modern age used as a weapon for unhealthy extremes. You know, and I think it can't always work out this way for people. But like you said, I just think there's ditches when it comes to work. There's the ditch of I'm going to be a workaholic. I'm going to use that as my escape. I'm going to, we talked about Sabbath and soul day. I'm going to have no margin for mental health, for family, for friends, for recreation, for dreaming. Or there's the other where we view work as a curse to be avoided or something to endure for 60 years and then retire, or something that is just a drain, a means to an end. And I think the more we can move towards the middle where we have a job with purpose, or we at least bring purpose to our job until we find a job that innately fills us with purpose.
That's another thing. Because, okay, let's talk about the job that's going to bring you purpose, but everything that we preach here in our Jesus context is that you have purpose in any context.
Right.
So
how are you bringing purpose?
how are you, if you work in food service or if you work in
Right.
McDonald's, guess what?
Right.
That's a great ministry.
yeah.
You're
It's a great
talking to
ministry.
people all day long.
All day long. People who need hope, people who are hungry
Yeah.
for.
But I think that's
Yeah.
the thing, though. If you don't have that internal purpose, okay, if you don't have that internal purpose, then you have nothing left but to try to find it in your job.
So you're saying that people who are trying to find a better purpose in a new job actually just need Jesus.
What did you just say?
I'm saying,
Oh my gosh.
that what if all of this is? I do think all roads lead back to what God's trying to do in this world, and you're seeing right now, I think, a culture and a society. Not that Christians aren't always also looking for different jobs, not that doing that's bad or anti-biblical or God doesn't want you to leave your job because But all I'm saying is that I think it's an indication of the spiritual restlessness. Of people right now that something needs to change, and I don't know what. So I'm going to look to my family. I'm going to look to I'm going to get a divorce from my spouse. I'm going to have another baby. I'm going to buy a new house and move. I'm going to live in a new city. Is that you are seeing spiritual restlessness that's been there forever manifest itself in all these crazy radical ways in society, and I just think it's a really interesting thing to watch and how that'll affect the church coming up in the next season of life. I don't know. I have no answers. I'm just it's just an awareness, and I think that
You know what's interesting? You can be living in the most significant moment of your life and not know it.
Yeah.
Right? You never know it until later.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine what would be interesting, and it'd be really fun if we're still doing this podcast 5 years from now, but it would just be interesting to what will we say about 2021 and this whole dynamic of work and purpose and coming out of the pandemic. It'll be interesting to see how much it shapes it. I do think that there are a lot of significant things that happened during the pandemic that have even shifted what our mindset is when it comes to church ministry in our context. And so undoubtedly it's done that in the workplace. And so I do think that I think you'll never get rid of a certain amount of person-to-person type of engagement in life and culture, which includes jobs like that. They're never going to go away. It's going to force someone's hand to do something, and that's what's going to be interesting. It feels like there's going to be this standoff. Either it's going to force a bunch of people, nope, you're out of money, things are going bankrupt, you're forced to go back and take whatever you can get, or it's going to force employers to go, we have to make some changes, and you see that now as there's massive bonuses to fast food, to anything. There's bonuses. I just heard an ad today. It was like $1,200 signing bonus to go work at a factory or warehouse and make $22 an hour. Like, you never had an opportunity to make more money without. And the one side caveat that we're not even talking about, this all affects economically, is education. higher education. There is right now
There's another
more and
fascinating
more. There is more and more. I've noticed this in the last year that I've never seen this before. There is more and more of a push away from. I know people in our church who work in admissions, other things in higher education. It has never been harder. There are less people than ever who are coming out of high school who are saying, "I'm going to college now."
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so I think they're all interconnected. This is the way it always is, right? That's why economists, future, all these people, they're brilliant. But one thing always leads to another. So it's going to be really fascinating to see, because I do think that that's a correction that I think we're going to see. Because I remember when I graduated from high school, it's interesting. I go to graduations now, and I've gone to my oldest daughter's graduation. I've got another one that's going to be graduating in a few years. And I listen to them now, when they announce everybody's names and they're going walking up, they tell what they're going to do. And about 98% of them all say this is what college they're going to and this is what they're going in. I mean, it's like 90, a few of them are going straight in the military. Last one, I remember at my daughter's graduation, one guy was going to be a welder, smartest one out of everybody there, because he's going to apprentice for 6 months and make six figures and not have any debt. Okay. But at 98 or seemed like percent of them were all going to college. When I graduated high school, I remember when they do that, I would say it was maybe 50% that said, well, I know I'm going to college, undecided, not sure. And so what we've seen for the last 20, 30 years is this big shift where it's like, you have to have a degree, have to have a degree, have to have a degree.
Back.
I think it's shifting. Well, it's shifting back anyways, because what's happened is your service industry. The cost, you will make way more money being a plumber, being an electrician, going to a trade school than you ever will getting your degree and being a teacher.
Well, we need to.
It's insane how much money that.
We need to-
And so guess what? That's why it costs a fortune to have a plumber to your house.
I'm so excited to have this conversation, and I think that this has been fun, because I think we need to listen back on this conversation, because there's like 3 episodes that are going to come from this episode.
We were not planning on talking about.
I'm serious
two-thirds
though.
of this.
Here's something I'd like to talk about. When we were talking about Gavin, this is just a sneak peek. I'm saying this so I can write it down for later.
You can write it down. I feel like I'm
I
the one
want
that
to
writes
talk
these all down.
about. I want to go back and maybe we can look at numbers, COVID numbers, state to state. Just to talk about the extremes. What were the differences and similarities between California and Texas?
You want to talk about how the COVID numbers are going back up?
I want to talk about masks. I want to talk about whether or not from this early data who was right and who was wrong, or if anybody was.
Do we know? And can we
I don't
trust?
know, but
Can we
let's
trust,
just have a
can we
conversation
trust the
about it.
information?
Let's have a
All right,
conversation.
we're gonna have to look it
about
up.
I want to talk. Maybe in that episode we can talk about California's recall election, because there's some real famous people that are running in that.
Yes, there are.
So that would be fascinating. How does like the first mainstream transgender woman run as a conservative?
And
That
almost get canceled already.
Let's talk about that.
Caitlyn Jenner.
I just think that's a fascinating conversation. I also think that let's talk about the future of higher education.
Yes, I think it's a fascinating conversation.
And within that conversation, we can talk about the future of higher education, and also what platforms have been devalued because of COVID. Here's the thing I think about. There's people who've started YouTube shows and podcasts that when we were going through the height of quarantine, the Today Show was being filmed on Zoom from a house.
It looked like it too. It's like
Everybody-
anybody else could do.
The quality, the level, the playing field has been leveled, and so what things, because of just that that small time in society, will forever be changed. I think that's a great convert, like cable news, things like that I'm thinking about. Tonight Show, all things of that nature. Future of that. Those are, I think, some good ones to start.
We're using actual precious podcast time to work on a list of things. Hey, speaking of which, we'll just go ahead and say it. If this podcast has sparked any of you just ideas, like I have a list of ideas, but we always want to talk about what you're thinking about. We want to talk about what's trending, what's cultural, what is the conversation happening, the bigger conversation happening in our country and our culture, and we want to hit that. So I just want to say, if this has sparked, you're like, wait a minute, if you're taking suggestions. I would love for you guys to talk about this.
Yeah.
Go ahead and send us an email to podcast@theexit.church. We would love to
Also-
throw it into the conversation. Who knows?
And let us know from earlier when Kevin and Tim were arguing who was right. Just email us.
I honestly, based on the way we
We
talked
got
about
an
it,
argument too.
we were both right.
We did, didn't we?
I've been right twice today.
So was I.
You were
It's amazing.
one.
I love
I
these-
was two.
I've been,
They don't
I've been
argue
right
in
this whole
Iceland.
time.
Why are you hating on Iceland today?
I just have loved this conversation because I think people sometimes are a little bit like, why are we spending time thinking about what we don't know? I think there's huge value in getting with people that you know and love and having a civil conversation about what might happen. Because what we believe to be inherent about people, especially who are listening to this podcast, is you're shaping the future of the context you find yourself in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can be a result or be a pawn or be a recipient of the future that others are creating, or you can put your antennas up and without cynicism in your heart or your eyes, or without being crippled by fear of what's going to happen next, be a part of creating solutions for problems that are brand new in the world.
Yeah.
Or maybe not brand new, but people are now awake to some very new problems that we see. And so you have things in you that we would say even God's put inside of you to solve a problem, to help somebody that you work next to, that you live next to. And out of great seasons of turmoil and out of great seasons of really just civil destruction, we are going to see beautiful things rise from those ashes.
Yeah.
And you, if you put on your innovative mindset, if you put on your optimistic goggles to see the world through, then you are going to be able to shape a future that no one's ever seen before. So we are so thankful that you're here. Send us an email. We've gone for a long time today, but it's been fun. So we'll catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.